في لقائنا الخاص والحصري اليوم نتوقف عند محطات كثيرة، فمن هنا من ليتوانيا نعبر إلى أوروبا ككل لنطلع من مركز القرار على القرار وعلى الخطر المحتمل الذي يهدد القارة العجوز بالإجمال، لا سيما بعد تهديدات روسيا بوضع أسلحة نووية تكتيكية في بيلاروسيا وعلى حدودها مع دول الناتو. أسئلة كثيرة نحملها اليوم إلى رئيسة وزراء ليتوانيا، نستهلها بدور التتار المسلمين في ليتوانيا وفشل روسيا في التعامل معهم في أوكرانيا كقيمة مضافة. ماذا عن حسابات أوروبا الأمنية بالنظر إلى التطورات؟ وما هو موقف ليتوانيا في حال ستشهد بيلاروسيا تمردا مسلحا ضد نظام لوكاشينكو؟ ماذا عن مستقبل الحرب وأداء القادة الأوروبيين؟ ماذا عن خطر انتشار الصراع خارج أوكرانيا؟ وما هي الخطوط العريضة لسلام دائم بين روسيا وأوكرانيا؟ نناقش كل ذلك مع ضيفة اليوم رئيسة وزراء ليتوانيا سيدة إنغريدا سيمونيته. سيدة إنغريدا، أهلا بك في أخبار الآن وشكرا على وجودك معنا.
Thank you for coming.
أود أن أبدأ بسؤال ثقافي. نحن نعلم أن التتار المسلمون لعبوا دورا رئيسيا داخل ليتوانيا لعدة قرون، بما في ذلك في العصر الحديث حارب المسلمون من أجل الحرية والكرامة الليتوانية. نرى الظاهرة نفسها في أوكرانيا، حيث يدافع التتار المسلمون بفخر عن وطنهم ضد روسيا، وفي المقابل نرى أن روسيا تحاول القضاء على هوية التتار المسلمون في شبه جزيرة القرم. هل يمكنكم المساعدة في فهم هذا التناقض الملحوظ، ولماذا فشلت روسيا في تعاملها مع المسلمين؟
Well, I think it's been like that for ages, because when Tatars and people of other nationalities came to live in the territory of Lithuania, that was a very open state. And any person of goodwill, regardless of his activity, regardless of his faith, regardless of his ethnicity, was able to come and join the community. And that's why we're proud to say that so many different nationals were fighting for our country for ages. But with Russia, that was different. From the times of Moscovia, the concept of the empire was to assimilate, to conquer and assimilate. And you most probably know about the Stalinist times where nations were sent over the country, and that was also done before during the empire times, sent over to Siberia or some other distant places. That was done to Chechens, Ingush, Tatars. Crimean Tatars are suffering not for the first time, I think, in current history. And that was the same with us, because there was an attempt to assimilate and make everybody subservient to the major culture, which they think is Russian. And during the Tsarist time, there was a ban on Lithuanian language and Lithuanian press. There were many cases like that throughout the centuries of Russian Empire. Unfortunately, there is nothing new.
نعم، بالانتقال إلى أهم قضية اليوم، دعت ليتوانيا إلى فرض عقوبات جديدة على موسكو ردا على تهديدات روسيا بوضع أسلحة نووية تكتيكية في بيلاروسيا وعلى حدودها مع دول الناتو، ومؤخرا وافقت بيلاروسيا على ذلك. إلى أي مدى يشكل ذلك تهديدا حقيقيا؟
Well, we know that there is nuclear weapons present in the places that can technically reach different destinations in Europe even today, not in Belarus, but in mainland Russia. But I think the political signal is very dire, because just a couple of days before Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi Jinping were discussing that, and they issued a communique where it was said that nobody should place a nuclear weapon outside the territory of the country. And just within a couple of days, Putin declared that he's about to locate this weapon in Belarus. Meaning that technically he's saying this is a territory of his country, because there is a very clear signal about the sovereignty of Belarus, as a matter of fact. And of course, this is a posturing, moving the idea, for now, not the weapon itself, but the idea of weapon being closer to NATO borders. And this is the way Russia usually heats the temperature. where there are no arguments left, then somebody will take out the nuclear weapon and will put that on the table, which is completely reckless. But this is how Russia behaves, unfortunately.
نعم. سيدة إنغريدا، كيف يمكن لنشر الأسلحة النووية في بيلاروسيا أن يغير حقا الحسابات الأمنية لأوروبا، وما الفرق الذي سيحدثه ذلك؟
Well, the whole situation in Ukraine and also around Ukraine has already changed the security situation for the region. Unfortunately, not for the better, because what happened, what we see happening since the end of 2021, but also from the beginning of this invasion on the 24th of February, is that Belarus technically becoming a military territory for Russia, and Russia does not have much to do to exploit it for its endeavors, because the invasion to Ukraine actually started from the Belarusian territory, despite the fact that Belarusian troops are not participating, but the country providing the land, providing the premises, providing training for Russian soldiers and also the weapons to Russian army. They are taking part in this war. That's why the situation has already deteriorated significantly. But of course, any additional posturing, any additional increase of temperature is just adding to this. So this is not a completely, different situation from what we were seeing, unfortunately, ever since Lukashenko decided that he remains in power with the force rather than with the people's will. And that's how he moved very close to becoming basically a vassal state for Russia.
يبدو أن روسيا تتعامل مع بيلاروسيا ليس كحليف ذي سيادة كما ذكرت الآن، إنما كدولة تابعة لها ولا تتمتع باستقلالية حقيقية في اتخاذ القرار. ألا تخاطر موسكو بتقويض لوكاشينكو من خلال إذلاله المستمر بأفعالها أحادية الجانب؟
Well, it's quite complicated to really understand what's in the head of Lukashenko, because you cannot make any real sort of judgments based on what he says, because he usually says all sorts of things. But it was a very telling situation with the nuclear weapon where he was not commenting anything about it for a couple of days, which might be the sign that he was just taken by surprise by what Russia said about the nuclear power. Nuclear weapons to be deployed on the Belarusian territory. So it seems like Kremlin does not see much value in sort of trying to coordinate or negotiate or discuss. And of course, this is a huge challenge for Belarusian society, and because less and less of the political sovereignty is being seen.
هنا أريد أن أسألك كيف ترين موقف جزء من الجيش البيلاروسي وبعض الأعضاء من الدولة الذين يقفون ضد الانتهاك الروسي المتزايد لسيادة وطنهم؟
Well, I think that countries like Russia and Belarus, they do one thing that is smart from their point of view. They invest heavily in the forces that are created to sustain the power of the autocrats. So they very much less care about the people, the population and their welfare, health services, education services, infrastructure and everything, but they invest quite heavily in what is their sort of things that support them. So I cannot speculate on this. I think it is not very probable in the foreseeable future. But with countries like Russia and Belarus, as a matter of fact, and other similar autocracies, you never really know.
نعم، في حال سيحصل تمرد مسلح ضد نظام لوكاشينكو، ماذا سيكون موقف ليتوانيا من حيث دعمه المباشر؟
Well, I think that the position of Lithuania stays the same throughout many years, that this is for Belarusian society to decide the future they want. And we know that the last elections were rigged and that Lukashenko stole the name of the president for himself and basically has no legitimacy at all, and Russia is the only factor that keeps him afloat in where he is. But of course, I'd prefer a change that would be democratic and similar to what happened in our country, despite the fact that we also had suffered losses of people's life who had to die for basically to defend the independence in 1991, when Russia was sending troops over Vilnius and people were just killed by Russian troops. But it would be much more preferable to see a democratic change in a country that is neighboring to us and dear to us, the population that is dear to us throughout the centuries.
تتصدر ليتوانيا الدعوات لتقديم دعم أقوى لأوكرانيا، ففي هذه المرحلة بالذات ما الذي تعتقدين أنه يمكن لأوروبا أن تفعله أكثر لكنها لم تفعله بعد؟
It's not Europe, only Europe. Of course, Europe is doing less than the United States are doing, so there are quite many eyes that look at what Europe can do more, but I think it's always the same. It's about the weapons that Ukrainian army needs to push the aggressor back. It's about the justice that needs to be there to make people who are guilty accountable, and this is support for Ukraine to go through this complicated period and rebuild itself after the war is over.
برأيك ما هي حاجة أوكرانيا الأكثر إلحاحاً اليوم من حيث الدعم العسكري؟
I think it's for Ukrainian chief commanders to tell what is the most important thing for them. And I think they keep telling the same. This is the heavy vehicles, heavy weapons, and air fighters that they need. So not much we can provide as a country, but something we very much encourage our partners to provide.
سيدة إنغريدا، هل يجب على الأوروبيين اليوم القلق بشأن احتمال إضعاف قدراتهم الدفاعية بما أنه يتم إرسال أسلحة ثقيلة وذخيرة إلى أوكرانيا؟
Yeah, they should be concerned, but then the question is what you do next, because you can be concerned and then decide not to provide the weapons, or you can be concerned and then decide that you need to speed up your spending and your military capacities, your industry capacities to replenish the stock, and this is the preferable option, and this is the preferable way, and this is something I think was lagging behind for many years in Europe, because the military industry is capable of doing more, but the problem is that the signals from the government came to the military industry rather late. So now many countries queue in US military companies waiting for deliveries to replenish the stock, although some of the things also can be produced and should be produced in Europe. And for this, Europe just needs to say that the pledge to increase the defense and security spending is here to stay.
نعم. كيف ترين خطر انتشار الصراع خارج أوكرانيا؟
I will try to be accurate in my judgment. I will say that if this war does not end with Ukraine winning, meaning pushing aggressor back and showing to Russia that there is absolutely no way they can redraw the boundaries of the states, then that might not lead to sort of immediate spread of the conflict to the other territories, but that will mean that there will be no sustainable peace in Europe for a rather long time.
كيف ينبغي للدول الأوروبية اليوم أن تتعامل مع قضايا جنودها المحترفين الذين يرغبون في التسريح من واجباتهم ثم يذهبون إلى أوكرانيا للقتال ضد روسيا بصفتهم الشخصية؟ هل من الجيد أن يتم دعمهم أم أن هناك مخاطر لا تستحق المخاطرة؟
Well, it has risks because at war you can be just killed, and this is the major risk. But when people are not in an active service of the country anymore, this is basically their choice to decide and come and join the Ukrainian army fighting Russia. And I don't think there is much countries can do or should do, because this is a choice of any particular military person.
إلى متى تعتقدين أن روسيا تستطيع الاستمرار اليوم في خوض هذه الحرب؟
I know that it's one of the most popular questions to discuss how long and when the war will end and things like that. I think it is complacency to say that, Russia suffered huge losses, which is true, and that they will sort of be out of stock and out of personnel very soon. They are losing enormous amounts of people and weapons, but it does not look like a political will is changing, like a political attitude is changing. So I think Putin is ready to pay whatever price just to prove him being right, although we know that he's wrong on all counts. But I don't think they are calculating in terms of, other countries would calculate, like why I'm losing 100,000 people, why I'm losing all my military equipment, why there are such severe losses and very, very limited progress on the front line. So I don't think Russia is ready to acknowledge that. And that's why they will go on as long as they are not pushed away.
هل يمكن اليوم للاتحاد الروسي أن ينجو من هذه الحرب؟ أو هل تتوقعين أن يتبع ذلك التشرذم نهاية الحرب ربما؟
Well, Russian history is a very telling one. Usually when Russia was losing wars, internal turbulences happened as a result. And we know the Bolshevik Revolution and coup rather than revolution, because revolution is a positive word, and this is what happened was a coup that led to so many problems. But that happened after First World War, although Russia was not losing in that war technically, but there was Japan War where Russia was losing and other reasons to that. So it looks like some of the regions might reconsider the logic of being part of the big pool. But again, this is for Russian people to decide what country they want. And if you ask me, do I believe there might be a different Russia, like democratic Russia with free elections and freedom of speech and everything? It's complicated because it seems that society is ready to consume what Putin and his elites are providing them with. But again, in countries like that, you never know.
نعم، يبدو أن الحرب اليوم تسير بشكل عكسي فيما يتعلق بأهداف موسكو المعلنة. برأيك ألا توجد أي قوى داخل النظام الروسي يمكنها تقييم الضرر وتهدئة الوضع ممكن من أجل وضع حد لمغامرة بوتين لإنقاذ روسيا ممكن من المزيد من الخسائر؟
Well, you hear those leaks from some of the elite cycles where they speak directly to each other and say that, we're losing this war, there's nothing we are gaining, we're under sanctions, we have massive financial losses, no capacities to travel around the globe like they used to, and this is stupid. And I think pretty many of the governing circles in Russia understand that this is crazy, that this makes no sense. But through the 23 years in power, Putin has built a very clear sort of vertical of his power. So I don't think he listens to them much, and I don't think they have many options to revert the orders that he's issuing. And the decisions are nearly 100%, most probably, depending on himself and a very close circle that is very limited. So I'm sure that there are many unhappy people, although maybe they might be imperialistic, they might think this war is just, but they still see the losses they are suffering, they see the change of way of life they used to live until this invasion. And actually they are, clever enough to understand that the risk was not worth it. But I don't think this is how Putin sees that, and that's why I do not see much chance of anybody persuading him being wrong. I think the only way for him to stop this is actually to hit the wall.
نعم. برأيك كيف يمكن لتلك الحرب أن تنتهي؟ وما هي الخطوط العريضة لسلام دائم بين روسيا وأوكرانيا؟
For us, and I was mentioning this in the beginning, that if Russia is not taught a lesson, a hard way, that there is no options for redrawing of boundaries in the 21st century Europe, then there will be a constant source of potential conflict, constant threatening, constant saber rattling, and sort of posturing. We might go this way or that way. We might consider going or attacking this country or that country, and this is what Russia usually does. So I think there is no other way, simply no other way for this war to end, but for Ukraine to win. And then the question of the post-war situation and post-war security situation in Europe is another issue. And for this, I think there are many things that need to be done. But first and foremost, European countries should be serious about their defense and security.
نعم، ممكن هنا أن توضحي لنا ما هي الخطوط العريضة اليوم لسلام دائم بين روسيا وأوكرانيا؟
I think President Zelensky put that in his peace plan, where everybody can read that, and I would agree 100%. But the major items are, of course, the victory of Ukraine, and then the justice that need to be there for those who are to blame for this aggression that happened in Ukraine.
هل تخشى ليتوانيا اليوم أن تواجه حرباً من جانب روسيا، خاصة وأن لوكاشينكو حليف قوي لبوتين وربما يكون مستعد لتنفيذ ما يطلبه منه الرئيس الروسي؟
Well, living close to Russia, I think we were among the first who were saying that unfortunately Russia is not changing to the better, but on the contrary is changing to the worse or to its historical past, where, you know, each and every time when the governors were failing to provide welfare to their people, there's prosperity and higher standards of living, they were going around and looking for lands instead, like to make a homeopathic change of a real solution for people, like giving that as a substitute. So this is something we need to take into account, but we should not sit and tremble. We should see that with their sane mind, and that's why we should invest in our defense and security, something we are doing for quite many years. That's why we should belong to the strongest alliances that are there, like NATO and European Union, and that's why the country should be united in treating aggressor. Because if there is some, dissenting opinions, if there is an option for arbitrage, then Putin might think that he can win. But I think this unity of around the globe and of understanding what is, who is wrong in this story and who is the right one is very telling, and people do understand who is the guilty one. So I think it is important that we stay united on this front.
أخيراً سيدة إنغريدا، ما هي رسالتك اليوم للرئيس بوتين؟
Well, I don't think he would read any of my messages. So what I would wish for him, I would wish to see him in Hague.